Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, where you may be connected to. And welcome to another episode of Data Xperience Podcast. And today I have a very special guest. She's a product designer at Moniepoint, and she's also someone who is doing great since she has a product she's building. So, hello, everybody. So, meet Alison Ayo, and short bio about Alison. So, just like I mentioned earlier, Alison is a senior product designer with a background that bridges science and creativity. And after transitioning from biochemistry into design, she has spent the few years crafting digital experiences that are both functional and intuitive. And our design approach lives at the intersection of business and design, ensuring that every decision supports both user needs and product goals. And she's also the founder of RaynaUI, a design system helping teams build scalable, user-friendly software as a service products. So hi everyone, meet Alison. Hi Alison.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so today we'll be discussing a very interesting topic, and all we're discussing is how data shapes product design. So,
Mhm.
Alison, I will do here the Data Experience Podcast, usually icebreaker questions to learn more
Okay.
about you. Okay, so the first one I'll just start with now is what's a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I don't know if most people know this, but I love math. And I didn't used to like math in school, which is weird. I think it was probably towards the end of my high school that I started to get comfortable with math. I got so comfortable that I registered for further maths in my WAEC and NECO. I don't know where I got that. I'm happy that I did that because I actually did really pass those. And another thing about me people might not know is that I love Sudoku. Sudoku a is what I use to unwind from design because it feels like when I have like a creative block or I'm stuck with the creative side of me, I shut down the creative side of my brain that helps me design and think for products. And I kind of activate the analytical side of my brain that I used to play Sudoku. So it's a very relaxing game for me.
That's really nice. Okay, so I'll just add one more question. So having moved across different fields, biochemistry and design. So if your career path was a movie genre, what would it be and why?
That's a good one. I don't know what I would call it. What movie genre would my career be? Maybe
I'm sure.
indie. I don't. It is it is interesting because I have done um like the how do I explain this? So the first thing that I did when I became, for lack of better words, my first work related anything was graphic design. And then I moved to software engineering. I started learning how to code because someone in my class said women don't code. But oh wait,
Mhm.
no. I started learning graphic design. Then I went to study biochemistry. Then while I was studying biochemistry, I learned how to code because a boy in my class said women don't code because we are lazy. So I learned that for the plot, just to be point. But after that, I had my first internship in an oil and gas company where I was a production chemistry intern for a year. And then after graduating, I found UX design. Now, I don't know what the connection behind all of this is because the initial plan was to finish biochemistry and go to medical school. And then while I was in school, I'm like, oh, I like the industrial chemistry a lot. So I was going to finish my course and do a 5-year program in University of North Dakota that would help me get a degree in chemical engineering. As we can see, that has not happened, or that's probably will not happen. But yeah, I don't know what the genre will be. What genre is that? It's all of the chaos and just plot twists here and there. I don't know what that is.
Thriller.
Yeah. You know what? Trailer is a good way to put it. Yeah. It's not that dramatic, but yeah, let's call it trailer. Let's call it trailer.
Nice, nice,
I think my
nice.
career path is one that nobody saw coming. Even I did not see it come. My parents are very surprised by where I am, and it's more funny because I can tell you for a fact that the future is going to be as dramatic as the past. So I'm very excited for that.
Wow, wow. That's nice. Yeah. So the next question I had is actually even like I think you've answered some of the question. So I would just like to ask about your career path. just like you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
starting in biochemistry, then the internship you mentioned in oil and gas, then now landing in product design. So I'd like to ask that, like the catalyst for coming into the design world, and also if you could share a bit of experience about your early life also, yeah, like high school and even elementary school,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. The first thing you asked was the catalyst for design. I feel like it was an accident in that I didn't know it was what it is when I entered. So, like, to be very honest, generally, no, naturally, I'm a very, what's the word? What's this for people who cannot stay one place? You get the point. I just can't
I
be
get it.
idle. I need to be doing something. I will lose my mind if I'm idle. I can't sit still. If I want to be able to, I want to do something. So being that as a child was very tricky because I was seen as a busybody. You are always doing too much. And I'm happy that my parents were able to ignore the noise from outside and just let me be me and thrive as myself, because if they had tried to kill that busybodiness, for lack of better words, I probably
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now. But growing up, it was seen as a bad thing, like a bad character, like you're always doing something. Why can't you sit down? Why can't you rest? And
imagine.
I don't know why that was, but I have that natural instinct to just get myself busy. If possible, in fact, I function more when there is a lot of things to do. I will do all of them better than I would have done if I was doing only one thing. So being that person, it was always difficult to it wasn't difficult, but like I had to always find multiple things to do. When the pandemic oh no, sorry, before I got to university, there's that break between when you write them, I'm waiting for post CTME forms to come out.
Yeah. I
My
experienced
dad
that too.
a graphic design school just because I was stressing him because I was idle and he didn't like me when I was idle. Like he didn't like how I felt when I was idle.
Ah,
And then from there I went to university. Then in
mm.
my third year,
Which uni was
no,
that?
my University of Uyo, Akwa Ibom
Oh,
State.
yeah.
That's where I'm
Oh,
from.
nice.
So in my third year was when I found before I went for my internship. I was just sitting in class and then I heard a boy. So all these computer engineering boys just come to night classes and start oppressing everybody with their laptops. And I just heard somebody saying, "Oh, women are you doing social media managers and content marketers, and they are the ones like selling down like the sales end of things." And sales is not a bad field. It's just that in the environment where I was at the time, sales was a derogatory term. And
Yeah, okay.
affiliating that with women was insulting to me. So it's like we build the things they're like, men, we build these things, we make it work, and women just sell it for us. I'm like, first of all, if you forgive my English, forgive my language.
That's
But that was
fine.
so respectful. And one thing that did for me was I started to find women online who were doing these things just to make sure that okay, I'm not crazy. Why an environment was well, no offense to the women there, they are beautiful women, but there was no proper representation for young women doing these things. For me coming from Lagos, I felt like I was in the wrong crowd because everybody here see women as domestic. You just finish school and go to one man's house, go and start giving the children, which is not bad, but I had a different idea of my life, where I wanted my life to be. And at that young age, I was like, I mean, boys my age are doing this and better. Why can't I do it because I'm a woman? That kind of thing. So I feel like I'm dragging this answer too long. I've never answered your question. But it was a challenge for me. So that was why I actually started out school, just to report. And it turns out that I actually found, as I was building myself, I was finding other women on the same path from LinkedIn. I think I had a Twitter account at the time. And then that's how I entered code. Then I went to my internship. I met other people, both male and female, great people. And then the pandemic happened.
I think we
And
met
when the
at that
pandemic,
internship.
sorry,
No, I was saying, I think we met at that internship. It was,
we
oh, I
met
guess
at that.
oh, no. That the one you mentioned was the oil and gas one. No, we met at the
Yeah,
other one you
yeah, yeah.
later did, yeah.
Yeah. So the pandemic happened and I had not finished, I was still I think about my final year, but I couldn't progress because I didn't have my final results and I was in a point where the world basically froze and Alison cannot be on point. I couldn't freeze with it. I needed to keep moving. So I started building templates on WordPress through a friend of mine in Abuja that actually did this WhatsApp class for a bit. And then he saw like, oh, you seem like you have like good visual skills. Why don't you learn UX design? And I'm like, oh, I haven't designed in a while. I don't think that I'm as creative as the designers who like are actually doing this thing. But I didn't know what UX was at the time. And then he was like, oh, you know what? There's this internship called Start NG. They've already started, but you can wait for like 2 months, which was to be June of 2020, and you can join the actual internship that's HNG, but it's very hard. I hope you're able to do it. So I spent those 2 months I was waiting to actually read up on UX and see what it was all about. Because I couldn't join strategy, they already started that. And I just tried to like watch, I was on YouTube for like maybe 12 hours a day. Okay, 12 hours is a long time. But I was on YouTube for a
Wow.
lot of hours a day, just
Wow.
trying to like find sources. I was taking free courses. I found UXL at the time. So I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I was just doing what everybody on YouTube said. Design every day, 30-day UI challenge, learn how to use Figma. I learned how to use Adobe
Mhm.
XD. I was comparing
Nice.
InVision, Adobe XD to Sketch while waiting for HN to happen. So that is how I found UX design. And even at the time, I didn't think of it as a full-time career because again, I was doing this to while away time, while
Full
waiting for the
time, yeah.
pandemic to get my results and proceed with my life. But find out we are here now. Anyways,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Problem. So 12 hours a day, that's like sleep is for the
Okay,
weak.
I don't know if it's 12 hours, but I promise it was a long time just watching videos. It might not
Yeah,
be 12 hours, but it was a lot of hours. Maybe
yeah,
6. I
nice.
don't know.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's so nice to hear about that. Okay. So just a last question I had before going into the data part. I wanted to know, like, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced transitioning fields, and what were some of the skills that were transferable? Like, just like you mentioned, when you tried software engineering and even the product design and even biochemistry and your internship also, the one at Dell, I guess.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge was the market because I'm coming from a different background and I'm competing or I'm in the pool with people who study this thing in school, who have done this for longer, who have formal education in this, especially on a global level, and
Mm.
I'm mostly self-taught. So that might have been the challenge for me because now everything that I am learning about design, I'm learning on the job, which is only possible because of the person that I am, but I'm in the same market with people who they have a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, they have a master's in UX design, some even have like PhDs,
Usability
they have
engineering. Yeah.
exactly. They have worked like extensively with companies that have very strong design culture. And I'm just trying to figure things out along the way and learn on the job and learn with I talk to other people networking, I talk to the designers. So I've had to do a lot more work because I didn't have like the foundation that these people have. So that might have been the challenge. But I think I've been able to overcome it because of again, I'm all over the place. I'm all over the place basically. But in terms of transferable skills, I think there's only one thing that I have that I'm always grateful for, and that is hunger and resilience. Okay, I said one thing, but there's a couple. But hunger and resilience is something that I have, and it's something that my dad sees, and he always tells me that when I was younger, he was worried about me. You know how like you have a child and you want them to be great and everything.
Yeah.
But at some point he just stopped being worried because he realized that even if I decide to sell plantain today,
Yeah,
I'll do a good
you,
job. I'll be a very good job at selling
good
plantain.
job.
What his initial desire was, oh, be a doctor or be an engineer or something professional that I can brag about. He's like, you
Yeah.
know what? It doesn't matter what you do it so well. So I'm not worried about you anymore. And it's why I also say that like even if I decide that I want to learn, what can I learn now? Maybe I want to be a lawyer tomorrow. I can actually I'll be a very good lawyer. Like I will do I can
Yeah.
whatever it is that I say that I want to
Yeah.
I set my mind to do, I'll do excellently well. And that's I don't know if it's a transferable skill, but it's just like I have that. And it just means that whatever it takes, because I have a very big fear of being average. So there's this innate desire to just do better and be better. Like, if
Yeah.
they hear my name, just doing you can only affiliate this name with excellence. Yeah, that is something that pushes me on a daily basis.
That's a really good one. I like what you mentioned about like people doing things. So I tell people that there's nothing that you can be. it just takes like you to be dedicated. Like I guess like people learn different ways. So maybe someone else trying to just like be assuming an AI. The person probably
Mhm.
what the person studies in 5 hours, you probably do it in 10 hours. But you kind of
Mhm.
find out that there's no career in this world like you want to do that you can't do. Because yeah, this is what I've come to understand. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Okay,
No
so now
worries.
we'll go into, so let's like jump into the data part of it. So now just asking about your role at Moniepoint and fintech design, and also we'll be talking a bit about how data shapes design at Moniepoint.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so for people that are not familiar about Moniepoint, our listeners that are not Moniepoint, so I'd just like to ask, like, what kinds of financial solutions do you get to work on at Moniepoint as a senior product designer?
Okay, I think I might just say it at this point. At the time of recording this podcast, I no longer work at Moniepoint. It's the very
Okay.
recent development. Sent in my resignation a few weeks ago. Yeah, I don't work at Moniepoint anymore, but I will talk about my experience in the 3 years and
Okay.
6 months that I worked. Moniepoint is, I'm sure, I don't need to tell you about Moniepoint. I'll tell the people who are listening, but I'm sure you know that Moniepoint has an
Yeah, I do.
extremely
I do. I do.
like, the growth in the last 2, 3 years has been amazing, and I'm honestly
Yeah.
very honest to be having a part of that at some point. But I think what makes the company and the product we're building very interesting is that we're building financial solutions for markets where traditional banking has not always met people's needs. So we're basically providing everything from payment processing to banking operations for both businesses and individuals. So we have right now we have business banking and we have personal banking. Didn't start as so before my recognition. I don't say my what's the word. Before I left, my final
Yeah.
role was the senior product designer for payments. It basically meant that I was in charge of designing user experiences for the payments feature. So think inward transfer, that's what transfers, airtime data, bill payments, all those good
Oh,
stuff. I didn't start as that. I started as an associate designer and I got promoted to this after like a while. While it seems like a very simple thing, I mean, it's so people are doing payments. Finance is a very popular industry, but we are designing solutions to make these processes less painful and more reliable. Now, what makes this thing challenging and exciting at the same time is that we're trying to bank the unbanked, quote unquote. It's not money points motto, but you get the point. Trying to
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure that those who so because of this, we're trying it basically means that sometimes we're designing for people who have little to no experience with digital financial tools.
Yeah.
So there's always this constant balance of trying to make something powerful enough to, power complex business needs, but simple enough that
Yeah, simple enough. Yeah.
someone doesn't have any education can typically use it. And it's very hard sometimes because, especially as a designer, because sometimes subconsciously we assume a lot of things and we go to tests, which is why testing is my favorite part of the job. And then testing humbles me every time because something that I thought this thing is going to be obvious. Come to find out, it was not obvious at all. In fact, nobody even saw it. So yeah, it's the part that makes the job very interesting because there's a challenge to take something so complex and make it so simple, and that's a very hard thing to do. But yeah, that is basically what I was doing at Moniepoint.
Awesome, awesome. That's a great one. And you mentioned A and B tests. So I wanted to know, like, which other kinds of data did you work on that informed your design process?
Oh, data is actually the backbone of design decisions at Moniepoint, especially. And I'm saying this even before I left, and it was a very strong thing. And it was interesting, particularly for me, because this was an ongoing development. Data didn't always okay. Some things we didn't track because we didn't know we needed to track them. So it was a thing of me always, or not me, like product team always going to data to say, let's track A, B, C, D, E, and let's see how to improve a process because you can't improve a process if you don't know how it's doing. For example, I would need to ask like let's say percentage of bulk payments, for example, over the last 90 days, and I'm just hearing, oh, we didn't track that. Now I can't improve that process if I don't know what the data is like, if I don't know if there are any drop off points or if there are any friction with user experience there that numbers would have typically showed. So now we need to start tracking that. So it was a collaborative effort with product always trying to find friction points that we needed to pay more attention to. And then collaborate with data teams also, like make sure that we are tracking it properly. But yeah, other than the data from the guide, which is more quantitative, we also had qualitative feedback, qualitative data that we will get from user interviews, support tickets, feedback sessions. And this, in my opinion, is the most important part because it helps us to see the why behind the numbers that we're getting from data. So if for example, data is showing you that, oh, we have 90% completed payment transfer, 90% completion of transfers, but what that number doesn't show you is how they feel about it. You can see how long it takes them. You can see if it's successful or not. You can probably even see what time of the day people send money the most, but you can't see how they feel about it. And that's where quantitative data goes into. People are always going to talk about it. People will go to Twitter to rant if they feel bad about something, if they feel good about something. People will, in the support tickets, be able to express themselves. People will talk about it in their app reviews. So you need to also get a feel of what is in your user's head when when they are using your product, which is where this basically happens. And we look at patterns in financial behavior for things like at that time of the day where transaction volumes spike, or is there a season, maybe like Christmas, where um transaction volumes are like higher during season, festive periods or whatever. So this, all of this basically gives us like real world context. And I think the magic happens when you're able to combine both of these things. So getting the numbers is great, but also talking to the people who actually use that product and see how they react to using your product and hear them when they're using, like just see how they feel about it basically. Because you're designing for humans at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that would be my answer to that question.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I would ask a follow-up question. So how
Mhm.
do you typically collaborate with data analyst or data scientist or the engineers at Moniepoint? So I also like to know like the structure of the team and how you get to collaborate with them.
Okay. I think it's a very crucial thing to do in collaborate. I don't know. I'm actually worried about who don't have this. I mean, I'm sure they'll figure it out eventually, but I think it's very underrated. And I'll probably share an example. One example that comes to mind is when we're trying to redesign our payment confirmation experience. So basically, no, payment feedback experience.
Okay.
Confirmation feedback, same thing. The whole thing basically. But I had this hypothesis that when a transfer is pending, people get confused. Again, an hypothesis because I'm assuming this is just based off of at least my own experience. And I can't use my experience to judge every other person or even like bulk of the people's feedback. But if I'm sending money to someone and the money doesn't go through, of course I'm going to have anxiety. Why did this money not go through? Where is it now? Do I get a refund? Will it go eventually? There's a few seconds of slight panic attack that comes in, especially when you're talking about businesses who are doing like high volume transactions. And one of these days, I sat down to with one of our data analysts and explain what's like I thought. And we actually did go to just scroll through Twitter and see what people were saying about, you know, how when my point makes a post, you see the comments, people saying my money, I sent money to somebody 3 weeks ago, they have not gotten it. Just the frustration that comes with, like, I could just basically feel that people were validating my hypothesis. So I went to the data guide to like track and like first see how often people, first thing is we were not even showing, you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
First thing is that we're not even showing a status update. Your transfer is pending. So to be very honest, Moniepoint has like a very high speed with transactions. Usually your money will get reversed quickly. But there are edge cases where sometimes it takes a minute because Moniepoint is not the problem. We were not even showing, oh, this thing is pending, will take 30 days, 30 minutes to resolve. All you see is pending and there's no follow-up anything. You have to go and reach out to customer support or buzz them on Twitter or call the number or anything. And basically the first thing we had to ask is people who were complaining first from support tickets, how, of course we didn't need the data team to talk about it, but we just had to just look at it and say, people who were complaining about, I sent money last week, it's been pending since last week, or just complaining about like, slow transactions. And then we also went to see people who were checking the payment status, which is like the transaction details page, multiple times for transactions that are pending. Problem with this thing is that we were not tracking that particular page. And this is where we started to track it. So this took a while because they needed to track over a period of time. When we after a few minutes, we actually also went to see people typically try to transfer again if a transfer is pending, or they just went to get all the numbers. And after like 3 months, they just pulled all the numbers together and we found patterns that were suggesting confusion from support to all the other things that I basically mentioned. And with this evidence, of course, we had an hypothesis, we had done like a prototype to improve this. But with this evidence we had gotten, we were able to validate the initial hypothesis and now like took the prototype we had designed, which solved this problem, to go test. And we got like amazing feedback from it that we then were able to push to production. So what made this work was not just me asking data guys, oh, ABC, and then they give me feedback. It was basically it was a lot of back and forth collaboration. So they would find something interesting that I didn't even think about, and I would ask follow-up questions based on what I'm thinking about on a design level, and they would dig deeper to like find more data to track, or even like data that they already track but it's not really related to what I'm saying, but it's kind of like related at the same time but I wasn't thinking about. And gradually we're able to build like a very rich picture of user behavior that none of us would have been able to do by ourselves, which I think was very interesting. So I think that designers need to not sometimes, but like most of the time, see data people as support for validating ideas or hypothesis or whatever, and they're trying to see designers as people who are trying to just improve the process. So like I feel like we need to it's not just even data, like the entire company has to
Entire
see
company, yeah.
goal is how do we improve the experience for users? So it's not like, oh, this is my team, don't come to my flow. The end goal is the same. I feel like if we're all keeping that in mind, collaboration will be way easier, whether it's data and design or data and engineering or design and engineering or whoever. But yeah, I think that is how I've been able to do it at least.
Yeah, yeah, good job. So it was a great work you did at Moniepoint, and even Moniepoint itself, job you guys are doing. Okay, so I'll just ask some questions about RaynaUI now. So like apart from Moniepoint, you've been working on RaynaUI for some time now. So it
Yeah.
was one you founded. So just like to ask that, what inspired you to create the design system, and what specific need or gap do you see it filling for software as a service product terms?
Yeah, I've got this opportunity to give a shout out to the other people on the team. While I might be the poster girl for Reina, I'm not the only founder.
Nice.
There's Collins, there's Gaga, there's Ozenma as well that have been supporting in the background with what we're doing at Reina. So thank you guys for having my back. But Reina came from a recurring problem that we found, which was that we're trying to automate a system. So if you think about the product development space, and which usually typically starts from design, whether it's research or whatever, you would see that even for somebody to, I could have like an idea, or as a startup, for example, an idea, and I want to quickly whip something up. One of the use cases. I'm not to whip something up quickly, and I have to spend hours defining components because it's better first for my design process and better for developers who implement it. And this is good, but I would have done it in like 10% of the time if I had used an already set component. Another use case is for companies who are probably small companies who are startups trying to just build something and build fast. The time that it takes to build a component library is ridiculous. That's one. Two, it's not just building the components, you also have to test for things like contrast and test for flexibility, and in some cases how easy is it to customize, how easy is it to document, just some very strenuous work that you honestly don't need to be doing. And seeing that all of us on team are designers who are designing for multiple brands, like almost every time we have to do these things from scratch over and over again. We have to build a system first for ourselves so that this thing is already automated. It's literally plug and play. And then for other people who are designers, developers, maybe even the founders themselves, or non-technical founders who wants to just build, they just want to build. They probably can't hire designers at the time. They want to build an idea and probably get investors to buy into where they can then invest in like hiring a proper design team to do the actual UX work. Whatever it is, that was a need. And honestly, we weren't sure how much of a need it was at the time, which is why we launched the first version and made it free to see what the market was like. And surprisingly, I'm sure you already know that we got quite a response. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And And sorry, 1 second. Yeah, it was great. We're overwhelmed by how much response we got. Even there's probably a few companies right now are probably, I think gaming, for example, is one of the companies who whose design system is powered by Rayna. And one of the
So
things we like
yeah,
most is how easy it is to use. Literally plug and play. It's literally plug and play. You know the time. It's first of all, it took like 6 months to build V1, and imagine having to take 6 months to build every component library for every project you are doing. That's a lot of time. So the flexibility that Rayna gives, also the fact that you could use these same components for different. Of course, you also, this does not take away the design skill that you need. So we're not helping you be a better, we're not replacing the design talent. No, we're trying to just make your process a bit better. So yeah, that was right now primarily for SaaS products. We wanted to create something that would allow the teams to focus on the unique product problem that they're actually trying to solve instead of trying to focus on reinventing flashy buttons and form fields like for like weeks or months. But we also didn't want the system to be too rigid that it would kill their creativity or make every product design we now look like it was designed with. And the whole point is to is to have range so that you could see product A and you wouldn't know that it's powered by Rain, just because how flexible and how wide the range typically is. Yeah, finding that balance is basically Rena's core mission. I think we've been able to do an amazing job with it.
yeah, great job, great job. So I want to ask, so at Reina, are you using data to measure impact? So like tracking adoption rates, like consistency improvements and all that things.
Yeah, so for Rena, there's probably three things that we track. It's three main things actually. The first thing is adoption, second thing is consistency, and the third thing is development velocity. Now, the last one, I will give more context to it in a bit. For adoption, we're trying to see how, just a bit of context, we're building a V2. Some things that I will say on this conversation it's not public yet, but you probably see it in a few weeks. But for
We're
adoption, we're
looking
basically
forward
trying
to it.
yeah, thank you. Well, we look at how completely teams are implementing the system. So are they using when teams use Rena, are they using the whole thing or are they using just a few components? Now we're also trying to see which components are people more likely to use. Of course, there's the foundations, which are like input fields and buttons, the icons sometimes, the colors, depending on like, the brand colors and stuff. For a company like Gimmick, where the brand color is identical to Rena, I think we've had almost, I would say, 70% adoption from the particular company. But we just basically track which components get used the most frequently and which ones teams tend to customize, mostly colors because and typography because these are tied to like the product brands. And this also like helps us understand where we might need to provide more flexibility. Now, for consistency, we've actually built, okay, no, we haven't built this yet, but we're working on building tools that can scan product interfaces and measure how closely they are adhering to RNAS patterns. Now, this is the intent of this is to give us like a quantitative measure of visual and interaction consistency across products, which is what we're trying to fix. We're trying to just make sure that it doesn't look the same. That's the whole point of building it. Like we don't want products to look the same because they are built from like the same design system, the same component library, and that's for consistency. Now, for development velocity, this is the one where we are still working on because we have a few teams that are running on V1 and have had their own engineering teams implement the components, while we are also working on V2 that will have this component already implemented for them. So this is going to be even solve the problem more. But right now, we are working with engineering teams to track how long it typically takes them to implement new features before and after using RaynaUI. So we've seen some teams that have cut their development time by up to 70%, to be honest, which is huge when you're in a competitive market. So something that will typically take 7 days, the engineers are doing like 2 days. This is front end, by the way. I'm not trying to replace back end engineers in the Lord's work. I'm talking about like the actual UI implementation. And what is really fascinating, honestly, is to see the correlation between consistency, adoption metrics, and user reported satisfaction. Yeah, I don't know if you know what I mean. Like the feedback we're getting, the verbal feedback we're getting from
Yeah,
users, user interviews, and like asking them to leave reviews is actually correlating with the numbers we are seeing, and that's just like just really, really, really amazing to see.
Yeah, great. So I was once short like question, but like
Mm-hmm.
in your former what you've been saying, one thing I just noticed like you mentioned like you emphasize making technology work for real people. So I would like to know how do you stay connected to user needs and ensure that designs are truly user centric?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to answer with all the honesty in my heart. Now, it is very easy to fall into the trap of designing for stakeholders, aka org center design. And this is not wrong. However, that's not the point. That's not the point of. I know sometimes it is out of your control as a designer, especially when your boss is insisting that they want that button to be blue. When you know for a fact that that's doing more harm than good to the user, or when your boss is like insisting on doing something that you know is a dark UX pattern. But I have this personal rule where I talk to the actual users that are using the product, whether it is in the product backlog or not. So if like user interview doesn't have to be my to-do list or my backlog or my Asana board for me to do it, because I realized that at the end of the day, people still who are insisting on a particular thing are insisting on it because they believe that um that's the best thing for users. But if I come to them with data to say, I hear you, but I've spoken to ABC person and this is what they have said. Now you're coming to them with data to say, what you're saying, I understand your perspective, but that's not what's going on in reality. That does two things for you. First, of course, it validates your solution to say I designed this because I was thinking of users in mind. Second thing it does is to, of course, show that you know what you are doing. So I'm not saying like for designers who are hearing me, you don't have to wait for your product manager to say, let's do user interviews. If you are designing a customer facing product, for example, you could easily just go on the street and talk to one or two people, take notes down, do a survey if you have to. Like you can do this thing without waiting for permission. Because if you're working for a company that is more stakeholders centered, you're going to need it to back up yourself. This is not to say that if you tell them this thing, you automatically like be allowed to do your work, but I think you shall done the part that you can, basically. Wait, I've forgotten the question. Anyways, Moniepoint, for example, we built systems that have kind of made this thing easier. So we have a user panel of people who have kind of opted in to give feedback regularly. And this is now that I'm thinking about it, they are different people for different teams because we have business and personal banking, so we are not using the same set of people repeatedly. We are like mixing it up. We are having like actual physical interviews where we go to the office and speak to people who come in for complaints and stuff like that. Yeah. So we basically watch them work, like we give them a prototype that we are trying to test, or even watch them do the transfer on what like the way they would typically do it on like what is in production, what is live on what's on their phones. And we also like, I think another thing that I think everybody should do is, there was a time when I did user testing with a colleague of mine, Ari, and we had to act as support agents. This was difficult because people who are coming to the office are agitated because they're coming to the office to complain about something. And we picked like we didn't go to the office for what they came like we went to test something entirely different, but we noticed based on people who had come to the office that they're complaining about what they complained about was mostly KYC centered. Money, my account is frozen, or my account is on PND, or my account is on Lien. And now we found another problem that was not the initial problem we came to, test for. Coincidentally, when we went back to the office, we realized that the problem that we actually found had a solution that solved our own problem better. My point is, we were able to improve the entire thing by just listening to them. Sometimes put your questions away and just look at these people and just watch them in their natural habitats, like natural. Don't put a 10-minute survey in front of them. Like, so that all you have to do is just watch them do transfers and hear them speak about their experience and just listen to them walk you through like their daily routine. And you probably pick something that you would not have realized if you had put your questions, because the questions typically be in a box, like very close-ended, and you wanted to just control the narrative. Sometimes you're trying to see work, even see them use your competitors' product if you can, to be honest. So talking to people is how you stay connected with their needs. As much as you are the designer, you are the dev, you are the expert, so many things you will not know if you don't talk to these people, especially when you're dealing with people who have like a wide range of literacy levels with digital products and digital tools. Yeah, constantly talking to them, whether it's in your to-do list or not. As a designer, it is your primary responsibility to talk to users. So yeah, I think I've explained enough on that topic,
Yeah.
on that question.
Yeah, and like what you mentioned, I believe that this is something also product teams needs to know. I would say that customers or users, they are the most important guys in the company because I've seen where some companies don't build, they build more like product teams are the ones building for themselves. They're not getting feedback from the main guys who will use the product here. So yeah,
Yeah.
good job, yeah. So the next question I just have now. Now we're talking about like the future. And we've
Mm-hmm.
spoken about data and design. So now, reflection on us about the future. So looking ahead, how do you see the relationship between product design and data evolving, especially within fintech? So this is a follow-up question also. Will designers need greater data literacy?
Can you answer the question again?
Will designers, will they need greater data literacy?
Yes, yes, they will significantly. I think nobody's talking about this thing, and that's what is making me. I'm not upset, but like it's just strange that you go to Twitter and you see a lot of topics, but nobody's talking about the real problem. Most times, many designers have on their portfolio that they do data-driven designs, or in your case studies, in your process frameworks, data is missing. If I ask an average designer now, at least in my country, open to a product where you use data to analyze or to redesign something, it's not as detailed as it should be, or it's not as it's not as, it could be better, for lack of better, it could be better. I do agree that at my point, for example, I do agree that sometimes the data team doesn't track exactly what we might need, but that's the thing, they won't know what you need until you go ask them. So don't see data as a library, you just go and, oh, give me this. I think that both teams need to work like collaboratively because again, the end goal is the same. Whatever the KPI for that company is, let's say for example, we're trying to get times 10 of users by the end of next quarter. We need to just, while our responsibilities of course are different, the end goal is the same. So it's you trying to explain to the data guys what it is you're doing and where they come in. And of course, the data guys also like explain to you where you come in. So it's more of a collaborative thing. And I think that once you communicate the design concerns to them, they even start to be advocates for you with whatever they are tracking. So they might even come and say, oh, we started tracking ABCDE, or we're tracking this, and while it's not related to exactly the problem, I feel like it can give you like an opportunity to solve, maybe to improve an existing process. Or do you think you can solve this? For example, we noticed that it takes users an average of like 2 minutes to complete the transaction. Do you think if you can shorten it to 1 minute, of course it's better UX. So there has to be a middle ground between data and design. And there's been a lot of conversation about data and design and development, which is great. But I feel like we are what's the English for this now? Not putting light on the data part of things because yeah, I don't know why we're not doing that, but we need to do that a little more, a lot more actually, if you're going to build products that are actually solving problems.
Yeah,
So yeah.
thank you so much. Okay, so let's second to the last question.
Okay.
So, I would want to know what are you most excited about in the future of product design? So generally or within fintech, also related to design systems like RaynaUI.
What I'm most excited about? That's a good one. There's a couple of things I'm excited about, to be honest. I think the first one is that with the AI coming in, things are changing and changing really fast. And I'm not worried that AI is taking my job, but I'm excited. Like, if you told me 3 years ago that I would be using AI in my process, I would argue with you extensively because at that time it felt like AI was some replacement, and I'll be arguing that I can't take my job. AI can't design for humans, only humans can design for humans, yada yada yada. But now AI has so deep into my process that I can't even remember what my process was like without it. And I'm excited, and this is like 2 year duration. I'm thinking of what the next 2 or 3 years will look like.
Next year. Yeah.
I'm excited for it. And I'm just, yeah, I'm really happy to see with the way that emerging tech is rapidly being adopted, seeing what that means for product development as a whole, of course, with design and data and development, but most importantly with the whole product, like how are we building products with the way that tech has evolved, and how are we selling product with the way tech has evolved, with the way content now has like a whole different meaning. Just seeing what all of that looks like in the next 10 years. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much, Alison. Okay, so last question, our listeners. So I wanted to ask, where can our listeners learn more about your work and your perspective on the intersection of design and data?
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm actually everywhere, primarily Instagram and LinkedIn. If you're on TikTok, sure, you can find me on TikTok as well. But I am the Alison Ayo everywhere. And primarily I'm usually speaking about the intersection of business and design because of course data is part of it. Offense. Data is part of it. But I'm doing this because sometimes we get so deep in the process that we forget why we are doing all of these things. The bottom line of every business is revenue or users, whatever it is the KPI for that company is. My
Yes,
point is, if your founder is not non-technical, or the stakeholders are like non-technical people, they don't care about your flying prototypes. Those are great, of course, but they don't understand how that ties into their bottom line. So if you don't know what the bottom line is and you don't know how your process ties into the bottom line, you can't explain it to somebody who does not do your work. So I think designers should be at the forefront of discussing how design is a business decision as opposed to being an aesthetic function, like, oh, just come make my website fine. We need to be able to talk about how design can actually make or break your entire product, your entire business. And that's what I am dedicated myself to doing, at least for the next few years. So you would find me making videos and content around that. I mean, if that's your jam, you can find me on Instagram, or LinkedIn, or TikTok, or Twitter, or YouTube, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere at the Alison Ayo. And yeah, if you do have any questions, of course, feel free to leave me a message or a comment in any of my videos or content or whatever, and I'll get to it.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alison. And it wasn't easy getting Alison on the podcast. So we're busy schedule, but yeah, thank you so much for giving us this time. It's a pleasure having you. So yeah, guys, you
Thank you.
edit. You want to learn more about how data influences product design and even the collaboration of product design itself works with data. So you can follow Alison LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, the Alison area. So yeah, thank you so much, Alison, and listeners, thank you. So podcast will return soon for season 2, episode 3 in some weeks. So bye everyone and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.